Our topic today is the witch trials of J.K. Rowling.
She's a champion for women's spaces.
Emma has grown up in an isolated bubble within this entertainment industry.
Emma is rightly free to disagree with me, and indeed to discuss her feelings about me in public. But I have the same right, and I've finally decided to exercise it. Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Our topic today is the aftermath of the witch trials of J.K. Rowling.
Or maybe you could even call it the climax.
The climax? Yeah, we'll see. We'll get to that. But first, go check out patriotshop.us and buy this awesome shirt. It says, "The truth will set you free," or Andrew is wearing our American Patriot shirt. Go buy that one. There's books, stickers, all sorts of stuff. Go check that out. That's one of the best ways to support us. The best way to support us is to go to patriotpost.us and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. Comes out Monday through Friday at noon. Go do that, and let's get started. Let's start way back at the beginning. So J.K. Rowling is obviously very famous for writing one of the best-selling book series of all time, Harry Potter.
Yep.
But then she became, in the last 5 or 6 years, famous for something else. What was that?
Truth.
Okay, all right, truth. So she said 2 + 2 = 4? Is that what she said?
Essentially, yes.
Essentially, yes.
Oh, okay.
She's become, I don't know if embroiled is the right term, but she has become outspoken in what is a culture war item of transgender ideology and the discourse about that on the internet. And essentially, her position is the right position, and that is there's a man and there's a woman, and you're born one of the two, and you can't change.
Wow.
It's biologically impossible to be the other if you're already one. And most importantly, I think this is really the spearhead of her position, and that is when men claiming to be women invade women's spaces, it is morally wrong and must be spoken out against.
Yeah, it's to the detriment of women.
It is to the detriment of women, yes.
I think what's interesting, too, is she is one of the first and most staunch figures on the left who's taken this stand and hasn't backed down ever on it, to her credit. Now we can bring in the Harry Potter angle.
Yeah.
Okay.
The witch trials.
Right.
Yes.
So J.K. Rowling was very vocal about this 5 years ago, which is, in case you're not aware, that was before it was cool to say that trans women are not women, but they aren't. They're men.
Okay, I'm following the science.
It gets so confusing. To be clear, what I'm talking about is a man who dresses up as a woman is still a man.
Yeah,
so
biologically can't change.
Right. Back then, in 2020, J.K. Rowling has coined the term the witch trials of J.K. Rowling, from which hate was directed at J.K. Rowling, death threats, rape threats, all sorts of horrible things. Some of her former stars of the book series and turned movie series that she wrote turned on her. Most notably, the actress who played Hermione Granger and the actor who played Harry Potter. We're focusing on Hermione here, on Emma Watson. That's the actress's name. June 2020, so I guess that's right when BLM was going on.
Yeah, and this is the midst of COVID and all
Right,
that.
so this was peak woke. Emma Watson tweeted out, "Trans people are who they say they are and deserve to live their lives without being constantly questioned or told they aren't who they say they are." And she followed that up with, "I want my trans followers to know that I and so many other people around the world see you, respect you, and love you for who you are." And then she shared some trans organizations you could donate to, like she does, she said.
And this is in the wake of J.K. Rowling and her speaking out against that, essentially.
She was constantly saying this, just always saying men don't belong in women's bathrooms. That's like her key thing, is that, you know, as far as I can tell, Rowling would be fine with the trans ideology if they weren't saying men need to be in these spaces with women, because Rowling is still a leftist. But men should not be in these spaces with women.
Yeah.
That's just...
She's a champion for women's spaces.
Yeah. And so that's what Emma Watson said 5 years ago. And just to add some extra context, Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry Potter, also said, "Transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise on this subject than either Joe or I," Joe being J.K. Rowling.
Trust the experts. Trust the science.
Yeah, in the midst of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, we know what happened when we trusted all of that.
Right. And even in the UK now, actually was first the UK that overturned the idea that transitioning should be supported or that it was, beneficial in any way. And they brought the hammer down on gender affirming care, which is gender mutilating care, before anyone else.
Well, sort of. Put a caveat on it. For youth. Adults, it's a different story, but for youth, they said, pause. No, there's too many problems here. So I think that's an important caveat.
That is an important caveat. But they've gone further now, and even in the law, their Supreme Court, which is not the same thing as the U.S. Supreme Court, but it is significant, said, no, actually, legally, you have to make a difference between transgender women and real women.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing.
And defined what a woman was.
Right.
It is.
That was 2020 when Daniel and Emma made these comments, and now the worm has kind of turned. You can see the trend lines moving in J.K. Rowling's direction. They're not there yet, but they're getting there. But Emma Watson kind of walked back her statement, and here, watch it for yourself.
How can I? There's just no world in which I could ever cancel her out or cancel that out for anything. It has to remain true. It is true. And this is where this holding of these, I just don't know what else to do other than hold these two seemingly incompatible things together at the same time and just hope maybe they will one day resolve or co-join themselves, and maybe accept that they never will, but that they can both still be true. And I can love her. I can know she loved me. I can be grateful to her. I can know the things that she said are true. And there can be this whole other thing. And my job feels like to just hold all of it. But the bigger thing is just what she's done will never be taken away from me.
That was, interesting, because that is a moderation from Emma Watson. That is not the position she used to hold. She didn't quite say it, but she implied that J.K. Rowling was hateful.
Sure. Well, in that particular quote, I see a couple things happening. And she admits, I'm trying to hold two things at once. And the question here is why? And as you said before, Sterling, the tides do seem to be shifting in the other direction. And so with a lot of these actors and actresses who have grown up more or less in these isolated echo chambers, you could say privileged environments, they've become wealthy and powerful as far as name recognition and fame at a young age, and they don't really have a grasp on reality, I guess you might say. And the most important thing to them is their popularity. That is their bread and butter. And so particularly through the COVID era, that was the rise of cancel culture.
Yeah.
And at that moment, you saw everyone trying to not get canceled. I'd say Emma's definitely within that camp. Who's to say whether she really believes this stuff or she's just trying to go along with the culture that feeds her? I don't know. I don't know her heart.
Well, I would speculate that she was a believer.
Okay.
When she made those comments, she's coming out of it now. But if you followed her, I don't have all the sources for this, but I've followed her my whole life. I was watching Harry Potter as a young kid. Pretty much as soon as she was an adult, she was speaking in front of the UN on all sorts of
climate
usually
change,
on the left
feminism,
side, right?
All that kind of stuff.
She was usually speaking on the left-sided issues, and so I suspect that she believed what she was saying.
If she did believe it or does, she is now faced with a dichotomy of a power shift. And so she has to say to herself, if I really believe in this stuff, am I going to hold that line? Because Jo has, Rowling has held that line even in the face of danger. And so Emma now, she's being met with, as she says, hold two things, and having a hard time reconciling them. The reality is they aren't reconcilable. You can't say, I believe in this thing and I think this other person is horrible, and I say it publicly, but then come back around and be like, I actually love this person.
Yeah. And treasure them.
Treasure them, even though I've just said all these awful things about them in public over many years to save my own self.
Yeah.
In this moment, I'm trying to
figure out,
pedal backwards.
Well, just to that point, has she actually said stuff directly negatively about Rowling, or is
no?
Okay.
Well, we don't.
That
Yeah, I don't. I don't
is-
believe she did.
I don't think that her. Yes. So, and that's a good point. I don't know that she has specifically named her in any of this stuff. It's one of those things where everyone kind of knows what's going on because they're in short succession to one another.
You're right.
It seems pretty obvious, but yeah, to be fair, I don't think that
it's not just pretty obvious. It is obvious. Yeah. So Daniel Radcliffe made his statement where he, the actor who played Harry Potter, did call out J.K. Rowling by name. Okay. He called her Joe. That was on June 8th, 2020. And then June 10th, 2020 is when Emma Watson tweeted her tweet. So it's all clearly about J.K. Rowling.
Sure.
There's no question there.
Yeah, what I'm saying, though, is they're disagreeing with her perspective on the issue, correct? And so they are having, at least with Emma Watson here, with her latest kind of word salad comment, she's struggling with what I think actually is typical for a lot of us when we have a disagreement with somebody on something that we think is very fundamental, and yet we're also trying to appreciate them as another human being. And in the case of Emma Watson, nobody would know who Emma Watson is if it wasn't for Rowling.
Yeah.
And so recognizing how significant she is to her own career is something that I think she's wrestling with. You can't just dismiss that outright, even though you might strongly disagree with the other person. Yeah. And I'm also wondering, did she make this latest comment before or after the Charlie Kirk assassination?
After this comment just came out.
Well, the podcast just came out. I don't know when it was recorded.
Because I think that could play a little bit into our current climate right now, because I think there's a lot of kind of soul searching amongst some folks regarding just how divided the world has become.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And is this Emma's attempt to try to pull back away from this division, figure out how do we get along?
Reconcile.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And if that's the case, she should be thinking that.
Yeah.
Because we all should be.
Yeah.
I think you're trying to make space for Emma to kind of moderate and actually be like, okay, I shouldn't have said those things, and I'd like to make up with J.K. Rowling, or at least apologize, that kind of thing. And I agree. I think she should be allowed to do that, and we shouldn't, no one should be canceled forever. People should be allowed to evolve. But one thing that I think is important to say here is the fact, the waffle you just heard from Emma Watson is such a waffle, because she's trying to hold contradictory ideas. She's trying to hold the idea that J.K. Rowling is a person I love and treasure and value for what she did for me, and also she holds evil beliefs that are actually part of the trans genocide that is ongoing. You can't hold both of those ideas. And it reminded me of what you did see with Charlie Kirk, which is, and Clay Travis called this out from Outkick, which is, you can't say this kind of rhetoric, this language is incendiary and it's fascist and it's Nazi-esque and it's, leading to actual violence and death all around the world all the time, and there's no place for it in our politics. And then when the person who was saying those things gets killed, like Charlie did, then say, actually, this is terrible and there's no place for this kind of violence in our society. It's like, well, no. If the language was as bad, if the thing he was saying was as bad as his critics made it out to be, then you can't turn around and say it's wrong for him to have been killed. And I think that's the position Emma Watts is in, where she has to affirm the validity of trans people. And she has to affirm the danger they're in from people not affirming their identity. And at the same time, she's like, but, I do owe literally everything to J.K. Rowling.
Well, she also has to struggle with this idea of words are violence, which she essentially endorses that by way of the positions she's held. And then knowing that if that's the case, that her words are creating an environment where Rowling is in danger, and literally so, especially now that we know what happened to Charlie Kirk. That is the same possible fate to anyone who has a position of prominence and has something to say about any issue, in this case, particularly on the right these days, but really any issue that is of consequence. And so she's going to have to struggle with this too. Not only is it because of the value that Rowling has to her, but also the fact that she has to wrestle with her words could equal violence to Rowling.
Right.
So, okay. I mean, I'm wrestling with this in the sense of logically, I don't disagree with you guys. I don't think she's this clear of a thinker, to be honest.
She went to Brown.
She played Hermione Granger. That's the smartest character of all time.
I know. She should be, but I don't know that she is. She's grown up, like we said, kind of in a isolated bubble, as it were, within this entertainment industry from a child. So the influences who she worked with, the kind of the value system that she was subjected to there and learned from is clearly on the left and even radical left. Maybe as she's starting to realize, okay, not everybody sees this thing the way we are being told it should go, and now we're starting to actually be confronted with some serious negative things that have resulted from the message. Now she's kind of like, I think, beginning to question some of this. And I mean, it happens to all of us as we grow up and mature. There's things that we have to confront that we thought were a certain way, and suddenly we're confronted with something that we, just assumed everybody would have, who was good, saw it this way, and suddenly we're like, well, maybe there's something more here. So I do think she's kind of wrestling with and thinking through. So I don't know that she would understand, to the way you put it, and the way you put it, just how dangerous her position actually is, if you think about it logically.
Well, I wasn't saying, I think Andrew had a good point about, am I causing danger to J.K. Rowling? I think that's a good point. I don't know that Emma is thinking that either. Yeah. What my point is, she is having to hold two completely incompatible ideas, and that's why she's just word salading, because she can't do it. She can't figure out how to do it. So that's why she just keeps saying, I have to hold all this.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's exactly what transgenderism is. Two contradictory views being smashed together and held out, and it's just because someone says so, and you just adhere to it. So in one sense, she's kind of expanding this to another kind of sphere.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So we've done the background. We started in 2020. Well, we actually started in the 90s when Harry Potter was written. Yeah. But then we went to 2020. Now we have Emma Watson's recent comment, and there's actually something even more recent, because Emma's comment came out like a week ago. J.K. Rowling responded publicly on X, and it's a long post, so I'm not going to read all of it.
On September 29th.
Yeah, that's the morning we're recording. She says, Emma has every right to believe what she believes and speak out about it, and even say what she wants to say about me. And then she explains, until very recently, J.K. Rowling was unable to separate the 10-year-old Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint, who played the Ron, Hermione, and Harry in the movies, and needed kind of a protective motherly figure from J.K. Rowling on set with them, from the 30-something-year-old adults that they are now. And she's finally able to do it, because she's had it with getting hate from these people who owe everything to her. She explains how Emma is, as I think both of y'all have pointed out, kind of ignorant, because Emma Watson at 10 years old was cast in one of the biggest movie franchises of all time and has been a millionaire since at least age 14.
In addition to that, she comes from a wealthy family and went to expensive private school.
Right.
So she was already on the path to wealth.
Right.
Anyway, but not necessarily fame.
Right. And now, her whole life has been spent as ridiculously wealthy and ridiculously famous. And so she just lives in an altered reality, obviously. Rowling points that out, and she says, I'd be astounded if Emma has had to use a high street changing room since childhood, meaning, if you're not in a public changing room, you're not ever going to face a transgender dude in your changing room. Emma's public bathroom is single occupancy and comes with a security man standing guard outside the door. Goes on to explain all these women's spaces that, for Emma, are not the same as they are for ordinary women in the UK, especially. J.K. Rowling was not wealthy, was not a millionaire at age 14. She was, in fact, still living in poverty when she wrote Harry Potter. So she has more real world experience than Emma does, even though now she's a billionaire.
She's had to spend time in women's shelters and, basically has faced poverty. J.K.
Rowling finishes up, the greatest irony here is that had Emma not decided in her most recent interview to declare that she loves and treasures me, a change of tack I suspect she's adopted because she's noticed full-throated condemnation of me is no longer quite as fashionable as it was, I might never have been this honest. Adults can't expect to cozy up to an activist movement that regularly calls for a friend's assassination. To be clear, J.K. Rowling has gotten innumerable death threats and rape threats. And continuing the quote, then assert their right to the former friend's love, as though the friend was in fact their mother. Emma is rightly free to disagree with me, and indeed to discuss her feelings about me in public, but I have the same right, and I've finally decided to exercise it.
I think Emma has tried to be as best she could, given the relationship. She's expressed less direct hostility toward Rowling. However, I think that the deeper point there is you didn't care enough to really come to my defense. You didn't care enough to really say, hey, she's not a bad person because she, has a different perspective on this issue. Even just being milk toast like that, she wasn't even willing to do. But even if she was more like clear about saying, I was wrong to condemn her or something like that, I think Rowling would say thank you,
Yeah.
I think what's happened with this issue in particular, which makes it so difficult for people to see, is that it was turned into this absolute identity state of being issue for people. From the perspective of the pro-trans movement, even questioning their claim is tantamount to wishing death on them. That's kind of how it, like you were saying, that's kind of how it's projected. And so it's really hard, I think, for people to cut in that perspective to be able to divorce themselves from saying, okay, no, this isn't, if someone doesn't agree with this or sees this as a lifestyle, not a state of being, then they're going to come at it from different perspective or angle, and I can still recognize that they have a different perspective, and just because I have a different perspective, I don't have to condemn them for it as an individual, as a person.
I want to highlight this again. These kids got unbelievable wealth and fame at age 10, and they never were able to look back. Like, there was no changing it. They spent 11 years or something like that. It was 2001 to 2011, 10 years from the first movie to the last movie. And then, of course, myriad appearances since then. So, this is a huge part of their life, and they've just lived in this bubble always, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of a little bit of a rabbit trail, but there is the issue of young actors and how it kind of warps their perspective on life. And I think it's what's fascinating is those who still stay in it and become adults into it, they become some of the most radicalized individuals that you'll see.
One of the things that happens very often in the theater or movies or the arts in general is pushing boundaries. They don't have that touchstone of normalcy. They only have, okay, everyone's always pushing boundaries. Everyone's always doing something weird. Well, a guy dressing up like a woman, people do that on stage all the time. I mean, why is this a big deal? Who cares? Maybe you could say that especially these kids should know better, because there were all sorts of grim things going on with regards to how they were treated in public when they were 14, 15, 16 years old, especially for Emma, because unfortunately that's just the reality of being a young woman child star.
But they don't have the background to be able to recognize that, though. That's my point is, when you've grown up outside of it and you've grown up, quote unquote, normal, and then you come into this world and you can quickly say there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that background to rely on, that experiential background, knowledge, and you're just in this and you're just like, this is just what the world is, I think that you lose touch with the broader world and the broader culture. And you're told from a very young age, you're the stuff. You're important. You're somebody. People look up to you. And you experience that when you go out, the crowds are cheering your name, talking great about you. And so you can gain this kind of complex of like, I am somebody important. And so then when somebody says, well, then you need to stand up for X, Y, and Z issue, you're like, okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. In 2011, there probably weren't any people more famous than Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint. Yeah. They were top of the heap. It's going to shape your worldview. If you've ever been at that height, it's going to change the way you see everything. And you will feel compelled to weigh in on all sorts of things.
Well, and especially when people that you've grown up in that industry are leaning on you in a certain way to say, because of your platform, you need to lean into this.
Well, and even more so, and we've seen this with like Caitlin Clark, who's tried to be quiet. This is a different area. You know, we're talking basketball, just a brief aside, but try to say, hey, I just do this thing and I don't want to comment on all those other things. That's not an option within this ideology, because silence is endorsement or silence is violence.
Right.
In the same vein as whatever you say, your words are either violence or affirming. And so to your point, Thomas, you know, being compelled to say something isn't just being leaned on. It's also a key tenet of this worldview of, if you don't say anything at all, what is implied by that is open to interpretation by the tribe, and that can result in cancellation.
Yeah. They certainly had people in their ear being like, you got to say something or else everyone will think you're aligned with J.K. Rowling on this. It's understandable that they said it. It's totally understandable to me that J.K. Rowling is like, that's not good enough, Emma. I think that's an appropriate position for her to take. Or I hope, I guess, that these former child stars will get enough of a dose of reality to be like, actually, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I should never have done that. And then they can have a positive relationship with this woman who really has been an integral part of their life growing up.
Another takeaway that I see with this, and we can take these in our personal lives, I think, and that is, if there's somebody that you care about, that you have a history with, and you are tempted to have a very public and damaging disagreement in public online, give them a call.
Yeah.
You know, send them a note, sit down with them and talk about this stuff, especially your friends, really, especially your family.
Yeah.
It's particularly in this time because tensions are so high and the temperature is so hot. We have to remind ourselves of what really matters, especially in these close relationships. You know, the Bible says you go to your brother in private before you escalate if you have an issue with your brother. I know these are public figures. I know maybe there's a different calculus for all that, but so much of this even could have been solved if Emma just said, hey, let's grab a coffee and talk about this.
But that's exactly what this ideology won't let you do. Oh, you know, and especially because they're so famous, is paparazzi snaps pictures of Emma Watson seen cozying up to J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that's it. So I think Emma was in a tough spot. I do think she believed what she said when she said it. I hope this new statement does represent an evolution of her beliefs, and she will come to realize that, actually, no, that was crazy. Men can't become women. Good job to J.K. Rowling for not backing down on this. Well, that has been the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that bell icon so you see when we upload a new video. If you're watching on Spotify or anywhere that lets you leave a rating, give us 5 stars. That boosts us in the algorithm. Leave us some comments. Let us know what we should talk about next or a guest we should have on. Go check out patriotpost.us. Subscribe to our free daily newsletter. The Patriot is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.